5 Recent Comics Showcase. Hi, welcome to Garage Geek. While I'm on vacation, I decided that it's time for me to catch up on some of the comic books that I've bought and just put in boxes and never read. So I thought, what better motivator than YouTube to help me read these comics and get through them so that I could briefly share them. So the first is going to be the facsimile edition of Showcase number 22, which I assume is going to be the first appearance of Green Lantern. Now, this is a facsimile edition because the original was put out in 1959. And so we start with the origin of Green Lantern, and you're going to see the death of Abin Sur, who summons the Green Lantern, gives him instructions before his death, and it was because of a yellow ray in the Earth's atmosphere that caused Ibn Sur to crash land and then die. And so all the instructions for the Green Lantern is given to Hal Jordan. Now, Hal Jordan is a pilot, and this whole comic seems to be based around pilots and military, especially military planes. And so Hal Jordan being a pilot is probably a circumstance based on what this comic wanted to showcase, which was military pilots and planes. Green Lantern's origin is over within like 6 pages. And we end with Hal Jordan in this great panel thinking, and in time I hope to make Green Lantern a name to be feared by evil doers everywhere. Pretty cool. And then you get this ad for this frontier cabin that can fit 2 children. I got a kick out of that one. Next, we got a 1-pager about green oddities, and it goes through the history, some strange history of green as it was important in different cultures when it comes to holidays and customs. Next, we got a splash page that introduces the next Green Lantern story, and this was The Secret of the Flaming Spear. This splash page, like a lot of these old comics, they actually show a scene that's going to happen later. It's almost like the cover of a magazine or a comic book. Now, in this issue, we're introduced to Hal Jordan's boss, who's actually the boss's daughter, but she does become the boss later. And they both really like each other, but she's very no-nonsense and business-minded. Now, in this issue, in this story, there is a military plane that's being tested, but this group of people has sent a beam out to make it crash, but Green Lantern saves him, and then he goes in. But it's really funny because Hal's weakness is yellow, and it seems like everything that happens, they pick up a lamp and throw it at Hal, and he can't stop it, and it knocks him out, and the spies get away. And then they're driving away in a yellow car, and he can't affect the yellow car, so he comes up with an interesting solution to attack the tires. But at the end of this issue, the boss's daughter learns that she's going to be the boss because the dad wants to go on vacation and travel the world. And at that point, the boss's daughter, who becomes a boss, and her name is Carol, she decides that she cannot have any relations with an employee for the next 2 years until her father comes back. And Green Lantern sighs. He's a crestfallen pilot, moons over his fate. My power ring can do anything for me except get me one thing in the world I want most. Carol. And that's how we end this issue. I guess this issue is sponsored by Tootsie Rolls because at the end of each story, there's going to be a little ad with a poem. I'm going to read the first one to you. Outdoor camping is really the thing. Seeing wildlife and birds on the wing. With a well-loaded sack, Tootsie Rolls by the pack is enough to make anyone sing. There you have the little bird. I thought that was cute. There's a bunch of them in this issue, but you won't have to suffer through any more of these. I also found these ads for entrance to Palisades Amusement Park, and with this ad, you would get also 2 free rides. Imagine if you cut this out of this magazine. Like, this is worth so much money, the original, and to have that page gone because you went to the amusement park. Next, we have power-guided missiles. So different history of different kinds of missiles, which again, this is a lot of military. And then there's a story, a full-page story about different test pilots through the ages of aircraft flight. And this was actually pretty interesting. It was like reading an article on aviation history. In the last story, which is another Green Lantern story, we have this great splash page, Green Lantern, the Menace of the Runaway Missile. Now, as you can see, Green Lantern's going to have trouble because it's yellow, but look right there, the tip is red, so that's how he's going to get out of that one. So this missile, before I talk about that, there's some really, really cringy stuff by today's standards. Hal Jordan will not take no for an answer, and he keeps pressuring the boss, basically, to go out on a date with him, and she keeps saying no, and he keeps forcing it. He comes up behind her and says, "Hi, honey," and puts his hands around her waist. And she says, "Mr. Jordan, do you have an appointment here at this time?" "No, but I've got a grievance." "You want to keep your employees happy, don't you?" "That depends." And she's trying to fight him off. But then she gets him to run away because she says that she can't go out with him. She's going to a ball tonight, and Green Lantern will be her date. And of course, that makes Hal Jordan happy because, of course, he's Green Lantern, and he'll get to be with her all night. Now, she gets very angry because they're kissing, and he notices a rocket, and he zooms away mid-kiss. This is going to come back to bite him later, but he cleverly takes care of the missile that's yellow because of the red tip. When he goes back to the boss's daughter, she says, "I don't want to listen to your excuses, Green Lantern. You can just leave." And he's like, "What?" And the reason is, if he really loved her the way that she loves him, he would have had his eyes closed during that kiss and he wouldn't have noticed. So he can't possibly love her or feel the same way because his eyes were open during that kiss. It's hilarious. And so it didn't help that he saved the entire city. He shouldn't have had his eyes open during that kiss. And here we got another Tootsie Roll ad with another poem. And so, Green Lantern. This was a totally fun read and a fun introduction to the character of Green Lantern. I would recommend buying this. It was a real joy to read. The next comic I grabbed, I bought it for the cover, and it has this negative space Blade. It turns out that it's Blood Hunt #1. I think it's the introduction to an event that was going through the comics. Most event comics that I've read, I haven't really enjoyed. And this one I'm going to say is okay because it had a mysterious element, and that was, why is Blade acting the way he does throughout this issue? We know that there's something wrong with Blade initially or mid-comic because of what he does with the Avengers. I don't want to spoil it, but by the end, he's confronting Doctor Strange, and it's a great end page there. The art in this is a little muddy. It's not what I'm used to. But what happens initially is all the people in the world with these dark-born powers, something like that, they all explode, releasing all of this dark energy into the atmosphere, and it's pulling that from a dark realm, and that covers the earth in night, which allows a vampire attack. It's actually organized by a group, and their first item on their agenda is to take out the Avengers. They arrange it so that they are successful. Now, here's an example of a splash page with the art, and I'm going to say that this art is serviceable, but it doesn't do much for me. And I'm going to say that through the entire issue. It was an actually interesting issue, but the one thing that really held me back was the story. It was actually kind of intriguing. I would like to read #2 of this issue. So next we have another facsimile edition, which is The Brave and the Bold #54. And I read this whole comic through, and I didn't understand why it was being put into facsimile edition. And that's not because I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't realize the significance of this issue, and I had to look it up. So this is the first time that the Teen Titans joined forces, even though they're not named that. It's Kid Flash, Aqualad, and Robin. And I guess the next time they join forces, they add Wonder Girl from 1964. Now, this was a really fun issue. So it's broken into 3 chapters. And here's the splash page. And in between each chapter, there's like a page break where they have some kind of like funny. And in between chapters 2 and 3, there is another one of these essays that talk about young people throughout history who accomplished. They're actually talk about these really important people in history and what they actually accomplished in their youths. And then, of course, there's this another one of these comic pages. This is very dated. So it starts off with a whole town where the teens are up in arms against the adults, and they're going to riot. Well, they're not going to riot. They're having protests. Suddenly, they all disappear. But the teens had invited these 3 separate teen heroes to help them with the adults. And so they all end up showing up there, but the teens have disappeared. So now the 3 have to solve a mystery. It's really funny, though, because each teen interacts with their older counterpart, like Robin and Batman. So Batman says, those Hatton Corner teenagers are acting like spoiled brats. Batman, you sound like an old square. The Hatton Corners adults just won't listen to the kids there. And so each time the adults and the teen hero, they mirror what's going on in the town. That's going to happen again with the Flash and with Aqualad and Aquaman. It was actually kind of interesting. Supposedly, the missing teens left, and they left a note. All us cats decided to skip until adults to the music get hip. Build a new clubhouse, Hatton Corners teens. Now, Robin figures out that couldn't possibly have been written by the teenagers because they used the word music instead of jive. And so Robin, from the get-go, knows that they've been kidnapped. Another interesting thing that happens in this comic is that each one of these 3 make judgments and comments about each other. For example, Kid Flash is jealous of Aqualad, and Aqualad is jealous of Kid Flash. Neither of them very much like Robin's bossiness. For example, in this panel, it reads, "Stop bickering, you two," Robin says. "Stop bickering, you two." And then Kid Flash says, okay, for a guy without superpowers, you sure give a lot of orders. That's going to be very important because the whole case is obviously going to be solved because of Robin and his lack of powers. At the end, there are going to be 3 separate challenges, and they're each teen is going to have to face it in their own way. But the 2 fail, and it's up to Robin with his lack of powers to save the day. And I'm going to say that ultimately, his saving the day is important to the story, but it wasn't very believable. But they all rally around Robin as being the best hero. It's because of Robin's lack of powers that the villain underestimates Robin, and when he takes Aqualad and Kid Flash out, he leaves Robin alone, and that is his mistake. Now, we can see some of the art on the inside of this. And throughout, there's all these great ads for other comics. And here again is a ticket to go to the Palisades Amusement Park. They were really pumping that in these comics. Facsimile editions. This is another one that I thoroughly enjoyed. We have 2 more books. The next one is this issue of Fantastic Four, Book 19, The Perfect Storm, and I bought that for that amazing, I believe it's Alex Ross cover. I mean, look at that noir. The inside of this comic is a noir story. It totally fits. I was not expecting it, but I haven't read any of this run, and when I opened it up, I was confused. I didn't know what was going on, but I went with it. It's all done in black and white and red, and the art initially wasn't art that I loved, but it is very, very good. But it takes all of the characters in Fantastic Four, and it's like we're in a parallel universe where everyone doesn't have powers, but they have different jobs. And it's based on Alicia Masters being a detective, and Susan Storm comes into the detective agency because Reed Richards is missing. And so we go on an adventure, and we go through the town, and we start meeting all the different members of the Fantastic Four, but in their different alternate universe guises. There we have Johnny Storm, who does a little bit of an act of pyromania. I'm not going to spoil this, but the whole issue is wrapped up. It goes back to the world that we know of the Fantastic Four. All in all, this was a really fun issue that was an alternate parallel universe that gets wrapped up in the end, and we understand why it happens. It was a nice trip into an alternate universe to see the Fantastic Four characters in a different light. And for not having read any of this run, I'm a fan. The writing on this is really good, and it makes me want to go back and read the rest of this run. And the last comic is Archie series number 16, Betty and Me number 16, with the famous beat off cover. So just because of that, this comic skyrocketed in price. Does it merit the large price tag? The interior is fine, but it's just like every other Archie comic that I've read. There's going to be the same old hijinks. We've got an issue where Betty's father does not like Archie. He accuses Archie of basically being a wimp in many ways, and Betty is standing up for Archie, but Archie just keeps reinforcing the dad's idea of Archie because he gets any little injury or sliver or his coat gets ripped and he's back in Betty's house being ministered by Betty the nurse, which is just making the father laugh. Now, I saw this ad, and I know recently there was a movie with Christoph Waltz, I believe, where they were talking about the artists of this. I was looking at this art and I thought, who would ever buy that and hang that on their wall? I know art is subjective and it's different through different times, but those pictures are just so sad. Like that would depress me. I'd be like, I want to help those kittens. I don't want to see them staring at me like that all the time. Like, look at this one. So like, no, I wouldn't want to buy those. Next, we got some letters to Betty, Dear Betty. And they're actually fun to read. And this one, the final one, is the girl is lamenting the fact that she's fat and nobody likes her. Betty has to give her some advice. Here we got a one-pager that was nice. Here we have an ad for Archie to be careful on his bike, and it's for brakes. This was a cute story. Either Betty or Veronica, I think it's Betty, has a cousin in town. And Archie jumps to show her around, and the other two become instantly jealous. I won't spoil how it ends up, but the two girls are fuming, mad at Archie. Everybody can't understand how Archie wins and gets away with it. He's able to date another girl in front of them. They're mad, but in the end, he wins them over. So I won't spoil it for you. Here's a really cool ad for another comic, Betty and Veronica, Summer Fun. In the next story called The Dating Game, Betty desperately wants a date with Archie. And Veronica says there's no way because Archie's wrapped around her finger. And so Veronica bets Betty, if you can get Archie to hold your hand by the end of the day, then you can have a date with him. Is she successful? Is she not? I'm not going to spoil it, so I can't show the ending of it. So here's another one-pager of Lil Jinx. And then the final story is Betty is concerned because she hears that Archie is sick. So she rushes over to minister to him, and Veronica comes over too because she's angry that Betty's getting in on all the action, and I won't tell you how it ends. You'll just have to read it yourself. Betty and Me is a facsimile edition of a 12-cent comic. It's so cool that they actually left the original 12 cents on there, but there you see where the price is $3.99. Was this issue worth it? I'm gonna say of all the facsimile editions, this is just a silly issue. I could read any issue of Archie and Betty Me and get the same thing. It's all because of that cover. I'm so happy to have it, but I'm gonna say that you're not gonna get anything really different from any other Archie that you can get for $1. There you have 5 quick comic reviews. What did you think? I believe these are all recent comics, so they're all readily available at your local comic shop. Let me know what you think, if you've bought these, if you read any of these, and use YouTube as my redemption. I would like to thank all of you for the support.